Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute here. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning.
Natalia, good morning.
Good morning.
There's Allie. I hope you found those book suggestions helpful, or at least you're thinking about them.
I did. Sorry, I didn't write you back. It was my mom's 70th birthday yesterday, so I went
Wonderful.
grid for one day.
Good for you.
But I talked to my coach yesterday too, and we went through the books that you suggested, and she told me which ones she liked the best. So I have like 4 or 5 places to start. So yeah, I'm going to start this week.
Great. So let us know what you take out of the books, and we'll be happy to give you some advice further after that, if you like.
Yeah, it sounds good.
We'll give everyone one more minute to come on here, and then we'll get started. All right, I'm not going to wait any longer. I'm glad to be on with all of you. Thank you for being here. Let's get started this morning. Today's topic, the neuroscience of prospecting success. Today, we're going to get you thinking about how your brain works and how that affects your success in your business. You may think that the only things that matter to the success of your business are the competitive marketplace, interest rates, finding good clients, having enough inventory. All those things are important, it's true. But there's one factor that's extremely important and relevant to everything that you do that we don't think about that much, and that's our brain. Everything in your business is external to you: the clients, the marketplace, the people who are on your team. All that's external to you, but everything in your business actually goes through these 3 pounds of gray matter in your head called your brain. And so how your brain processes that information, how your brain interprets that information, how you share information, what you pay attention to, what you don't pay attention to, what you're comfortable with, what you're uncomfortable with, how you view things like risk versus reward, all of these are a function of your brain. And so there happen to be several habits that our brains have by genetics that affect our effectiveness in business. And we want to talk about what those are today, especially as they relate to prospecting and prospecting effectiveness. So I'm going to ask you a question here in just a minute, a couple of questions. I just like your honest answers to them. And then I'm going to take you through a slide deck with 5 aspects of our brains that are built into who we are, they're hardwired into us, and they affect our business success. We'll present each of those briefly, as well as a workaround to kind of counteract those things. And then we'll talk a little bit more after that. So let's start with the first question that I have. I'd like to ask you, and be honest with your answers here. Do you prospect for as many hours as you ideally should? Please put a yes or no into the chat box. Do you prospect for as many hours as you believe you ideally should? If you think you should prospect for 10 hours a week, do you prospect for 10 hours a week? You think you should prospect for 20 hours a week? Do you prospect for 20 hours a week? Let's hear what you say.
We got a lot of no's, David.
A lot of no's. That's exactly what I expected to hear. So I'm going to make some predictions about your brains today because we're talking about human brains and we're all humans. And so I can make a few predictions. My first prediction was everyone's pretty much going to say no there. I'm going to predict later that one of these things, one of the 5 things that I'm going to share with you, it's so powerful that science, and by the way, the 5 things that we're going to talk about are 5 things that are all validated by science. It's not speculation. It's not just like anecdotal, experience that you or someone else has. All 5 of these points are scientifically validated to be the way our brains work. I'm going to share with you one point that can increase your effectiveness prospecting by 10 to 20% without you spending an extra dollar or an extra minute of time. Would you be interested in getting 10 to 20% more clients out of your prospecting without spending an extra dollar or spending an extra minute doing it? I believe the answer to that one is yes. But here's my prediction. Even though I tell you what it is and I tell you that it's scientifically validated, many of you are still not going to do it. And the reason I say that is because something else in your brain is going to overrule this scientifically validated piece. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So got a lot of people who said no to this first question. I'd like to ask a couple of you to come off mute just briefly in one sentence or less. Why do you not prospect for as many hours as you ideally should? Allie, can we hear from you, please? Were you a no on there? What's your reasoning for not doing that?
I was going to be very dramatic and say I'd rather die than get on a phone call with a stranger.
Okay, got it. I'd rather die than get on a phone call with a stranger. Perfectly good. And you're not the only one thinking that. Thank you. Let's hear from one or two other folks.
That's
helpful. You're welcome.
Ken, how about you? Were you a no in there?
I just never get, I have 2 young kids and we have deals going on, and it's really a goal of mine every single day. And I don't put it first, I put it last. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, I didn't do it again.
Got it. So Allie's brain is telling her something about the uncomfortableness of talking with strangers. Ken's brain is telling him that other priorities are higher than that priority, right? No one's forcing him to not do it. He's just not doing it. And many of us are in the same boats as these two. Let's hear from a couple other folks, please. Why do you not?
Procrastinate.
I procrastinate. Thank you, Sarah. A lot of people in that boat as well. Who else?
Hey, good morning. Not sure what to say.
Okay, you're not sure what to say. Got it. You don't have the right kind of preparation, or you don't have the right script or whatever, right? You feel unprepared or unready to be successful in whatever way. Got it. And so there's another kind of brain is telling me I'm not prepared to do this.
David?
Yes, Peter?
My personal thought is that I'm a newer agent. I've had some success. I'm certainly in my learning curve. While I'm certainly not shy to call people, and I do agree with Allie, I would rather cut my arm off than cold call. I feel as though I don't have enough history and enough of the story to express to somebody else to differentiate me from Ken or from Talia, etc.
Got it. You don't have the killer story that's going to really make you successful at it.
I could tell one, but
right, but it may not get you anywhere. Right. Yep, absolutely. So thank you. So all of us have a story in our mind about why we shouldn't do this, can't do it right now. And there's a million other stories out there. I've got these demanding clients right now. I have so many deals to do, and it's a low yield thing. And I've got something else happening that's potentially more lucrative in the short term, right? 1,000 different rationales that we can have for why we don't do something that we all admit on the one hand we should be doing, right? For any of those of you who said no, do you think that it's not important? I believe most of you would say, I know it is important, but. And so there's something going on in our brains that's saying, on the one hand, this is important. I want to be successful in my business, and this is one way for me to be successful in this business. On the other hand, we're saying, I'm not going to do that. It's kind of interesting, right? But this is our brain preventing us from being successful. We've got one part of our brain saying, if I do this, I'll be successful. Another part of the brain saying, I'm not going to do it because. Let's look at 5 validated habits of our brain that get in the way of us doing something that maybe we know we ought to do or should do or could do. Let me pull up a slide deck and talk about a few things. Okay. 5 things that our brains naturally do. What I'm going to ask you to do is think about these 5 things as we talk through them, and think about what's one that you could take action on after today to help you boost your effectiveness. I probably would guess that more than one of these might have some relevance to you, because in fact, they're all relevant to all of us. We all have brains, and our brains all work the same way here. But as you hear me talk through these items, let's see which one might be most relevant to you. So I'll take through all 5, including a workaround for each of them. And then I will come off the slide deck for a minute and have a little more conversation about it. So 5 things that our brains naturally do. We can't prevent it. It's just part of how we're hardwired. We are programmed to do things this way, and it affects the actions that we take or the decisions that we make. First one here. Because our brains respond more slowly to varying tasks, this particular fact of the way that our brains work has been validated now for years and years. That is, when we present a variety of tasks to our brain at the same time, our brain struggles to do them all effectively. However, when we break them up into separate tasks and do those tasks one at a time and repetitively, our brains work much more quickly. And this has been validated by many studies around the world. For example, one way they validated this was one study from, I believe it was Stanford. They took 2 groups of people. One group, they gave them 5 math problems, just simple math, 124 plus 286, just simple math, 5 problems. And then they gave them an English reading that they had to read and then answer some interpretive questions about. And then they had 5 more math questions and then an English reading, and then 5 more math problems and an English reading. So they went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. The other group, they took the exact same math questions and the exact same English readings, and they just bunched them all together so that they did all the math first, and then they did all the readings second. And guess what they found? Interestingly, the accuracy was almost identical in both groups. They were told to do the test as accurately and quickly as possible. So the accuracy turned out to be almost identical between the 2 different groupings, but the speed was completely different. The people who did the groups where all the math was grouped together and all the English was grouped together actually completed the task 10 to 20% faster than the people who had the exact same tasks to complete, but went back and forth and back and forth. 10 to 20%, that's a significant amount. And so what the study is telling us, and the other studies have said the same thing, is that our brain needs a little bit of ramp up time every time we ask it to do something new and different. When we go from one type of task that's calling on a certain capability of our brain or a certain functionality, and then we switch to something else, there's a bit of a time lag in there. And every time we do that, we face that new time lag. So can you guess how this relates to how we prospect? If you're the kind of person who prospects by multitasking, you have to recognize that the science is telling us that multitasking slows us down by 10 to 20%. Doing the same job by multitasking back and forth will actually increase the amount of time that it takes us to complete it. And this is not speculation anymore. It is fact. It's been replicated many, many, many times. And so if you're the kind of person who's going to prospect while you're on the phone talking with somebody, but you're also trying to knock out an email at the same time, or you make 1 or 2 calls, then you kind of do an email or 2, and then you get your kid dressed for breakfast or whatever it is, you're actually slowing yourself down by 10 to 20%. And so if you're a person who's doing it that way, you can increase your efficiency by 10 to 20% by simply blocking out the other things, by simply making sure that you are doing one thing at a time and one thing only. Now, this is an extremely powerful insight that I doubt some of you are going to continue. I doubt some of you are going to take science's advice here to actually do prospecting without multitasking. But maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. This is number 1. It's the most important one. If you're going to set the time aside for prospecting, make it about prospecting and nothing else. This is the problem that happens in many offices too, by the way. For example, somebody's given a job to do, they have to scan a spreadsheet or whatever, but the boss puts that person right in the traffic lane of where people happen to walk through the office. And so everybody says, "Hi, Susan, how was your weekend? Hi, Susan, how was your weekend? Hi, Susan, how was your weekend?" And poor Susan has to keep picking her attention up to say hello to everybody and then put her attention back down. Everybody trying to be nice and polite is actually slowing Susan's work down by 10 to 20%. And that's real money. That's money spent on the business. It's a cost. So that's number 1. Number 2, our brains become easily distracted by external cues. This is a pretty obvious one. Obviously, it's been validated many times. You've probably experienced this where you're sitting in the living room with someone and the person's talking to you and you're listening, but maybe the television's on. And out of the corner of your eye, there's some movement on the TV or like a bright light or something, and it catches your attention momentarily. Or there's a sound that comes out of the TV. Somebody says something and suddenly your attention goes somewhere else. And you have to bring your attention back to what it is you're focusing on. Our brains are naturally wired to be distracted by external cues. The scientific explanation or supposition is that this is what made us safe from saber-toothed tigers or something when we're eating breakfast or we're eating food out in the field and the saber-toothed tiger walks into the corner of our eye or a shadow crosses in front of our path or something. Well, you pay attention to that. We notice it. And it's some kind of a protection mechanism that has worked through evolution to help us survive. That's the supposition. So what do we do about that as far as our prospecting goes? Quite simple. Remove the cues. Do you have phone tones? Do you keep your ringer on while you are prospecting? Do you have alerts from your calendar or some other software that you have for something like that? Are there passersby in your space where you do your prospecting who might bother you like they bother Susan every morning? If so, you need to remove those external cues so that they don't happen for you while you're doing this work. Your brain will go there if they're there. It's not simply saying, well, I'll just tune it out. We can't completely tune it out. Some of us do it better than others. But the biology here, the neurobiology is we can't tune it out. When we hear it, when we see it, when it comes up for us, boom, our attention immediately shifts to that. And wherever our attention was, in this case, prospecting, is immediately severed for a certain moment in time. So that's number two. Number three, our brains become bored by repetition. This is another one that seems pretty obvious, but it's really important for us in this particular work. You may have heard of Six Sigma. Six Sigma is a kind of a process for eliminating mistakes in repetitive processes, originally developed in assembly lines, that kind of work where the same person does the same thing over and over and over again. Over time, the brain becomes bored. It starts to lose interest and focus on what it's doing, and it starts wandering other places. And when that happens, of course, performance wanes. And so, for example, another example of that same phenomenon is you may know that the interstate highway system, when they built it out west where they could go for miles and miles and miles perfectly straight. They purposely put curves into the road because what they found was on the state highways that were already in existence at the time, people would drive on a straight road and just never have to adjust the wheel, and they would lose attention and they would either fall asleep or they would just lose attention. They'd start going off the road. And so when they built the interstate highways, they purposely built them so that you would never go more than a couple of miles straight before they'd put a little bit of a jog in the road and then continue on. So you're still basically going west, but they put that in there purposely to jog the brain a little bit, to say, oh, I need to adjust steering here a little bit here. Here's a little bit of a curve. Okay, a little bit of a curve back. Okay, continue. This is how we can work with this particular aspect of our brain to just give us a little bit of a stimulation or give us a little bit of a chance to not let the brain go into autopilot because of the repetitive action. How do we get around that? Very easily, timed breaks. Take a 5-minute vacation every 30 minutes, every 60 minutes, whatever it is that works for you. You may be able to go 60 minutes before you take a break, that's fine. You may be able to only go 30 minutes before you take a break, that's fine. Schedule a timer, put it on, or make it during calls, like make it 100 calls and then take your break. It doesn't have to be time exactly, but it could be 100 calls, you take your 5-minute break. And when you take your 5-minute break, this is important from the point before, don't start doing emails during those 5 minutes. Don't do something that's going to turn your brain into a very different kind of a function that you have to come back from. Do something simple like make yourself a cup of coffee, or walk out onto your deck and just smell the air, smell the flowers for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, and then come back, sit down and continue. It's important to give your brain the opportunity to take that little break. You may have heard the old-fashioned statement from car manufacturing, never buy a car that was built on a Monday or a Friday. And the idea there is that the person coming in on Monday is hungover, had a bad weekend or whatever, and may not be paying the attention that they may need to attend, to pay. Or on a Friday, it's been a long week, they've been doing the same thing for 5 days in a row, maybe they're kind of making mistakes. So I don't know if that's not maybe scientifically validated. And if there were some mistakes like that in the past, Six Sigma and other things like that would have, weeded most of them out. But all these things point to the importance of giving our brain a break, though not necessarily switching to a completely different kind of task that we have to return from. Number 4, our brains project observed patterns. You've probably seen this in the stock market. We see the stock market going up and up and up and up. And guess what we think it's going to do tomorrow? Keep going up. Everybody piles into the same stocks because they think it's going to keep going up forever. Our brains naturally extend patterns beyond what we have the data for. And you've probably seen the investment commercials where they say past performance is no guarantee of future success. They're reminding us that whatever has happened in the past, even though that they've averaged 12% return over the last 10 years, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to get it here, because that's naturally what people assume. Well, if they've always gotten 12%, I'm going to get 12%. Our brains project patterns onto places where we don't have the data for it. It's just the way that we make sense of the world around us. How does this relate to prospecting? Well, if you've got 35 no's in a row, what do you think you're going to get on the next call? And if you prospect every single day and you get maybe 1 out of 100 yeses, what do you think you're going to get today? And so if we simply allow our brain to go where we know it's going to go, guess what? It's going to start talking us out of it. We start saying, this is futile, this is a waste of time, why am I sitting here? I've got other clients waiting for me, right? This is for Ken and everybody else. This is such a low yield thing. And why should I just keep doing this? I'm just hitting my head against the wall. On the other hand, there's another part of our brain knows that maybe 1 out of 100, we will be successful. We just have to make the 100 to get the 1. And so we have to make sure that we're not allowing our brain to project the pattern out in the moment, because just like nobody knows what the stock market is going to do tomorrow, you don't know whether that next call will be the one that's the yes or not. Your brain will tell you it's not, because you've had 34 no's in a row. But we know from another point of view that the next one could be the yes. Finally, our brains naturally interpret our experiences. That is, whatever it is that we experience, our brain makes up a story about it. And it may be the right story, it may be the wrong story, but it's automatic for our brains to fill in the blanks. For example, have you ever walked past somebody in a hallway and somebody in your office or someplace, and you said hello or good morning to them, but they didn't say anything back? And immediately you start thinking, uh-oh, what was did I do something wrong? Was I too harsh on them yesterday? Oh, I spoke a little harshly during the meeting yesterday. Now they're not talking to me, right? Your brain starts into overdrive trying to interpret what's going on around you. You may have done the same thing if you've ever talked with somebody and they're listening, but then they look at their watch. And immediately you start thinking, oh, they just looked at their watch. They're bored. They don't care what I'm talking about. They don't respect me, right? All these ideas naturally come into our brain. We naturally fill in the space with some story. And very often the story is quite a limiting one. It's quite a self-defacing or self-limiting interpretation. This person doesn't like me. This person's not interested in me. This person doesn't think I'm worthy. This person doesn't think I'm respectable. This person doesn't care. All negative stuff is a negative reflection on us. And there's no doubt that if that's the story that comes into our brain, we're absolutely going to give it up. This is futile. Nobody cares about me. I don't have the right way of saying this. I don't have a good story. I'll never have the right skills, right? It's very easy for these interpretations to come up. And what do? They take us right out of the game. It's natural for them to interpret it this way, even as a self-protection mechanism. Like for our own ego, we don't want to admit maybe that we're not that good at it. We'd rather just stop doing it. So what do we do to short circuit this? We have to consciously choose a more positive way of framing the situation. And I'll give you one example. Ethan, one of our coaches here, he never falls into stories like, I don't have the right story. I don't have enough skill. People don't care. It's not a good time in the marketplace. I'm not good at this, whatever. He never has that kind of an interpretation. He said he used to make 500 calls a day, every day, without fail, 500. Now he pays somebody else to do it. Extremely thriving business. His approach, I asked him, how did you kind of stay with it for 500 calls a day, every single day? He said, for me, it was easy. He said, look, I know that out of every 100 calls, I get 1 appointment. And if I convert 10% of the appointments, then that means every 1,000 calls turns into a client. And so if my average commission for every client is $30,000, then those 1,000 calls are actually worth $30 to me. And so every time I make a call, I told myself, I'm paying myself $30. And at the end of this process, when I get that client and make that sale, I'm going to have $30,000. And so that was his story. That was his way of framing the situation that motivated him to continue rather than demotivated him, right? If the story is, I don't do this well enough. I don't have enough experience. I'm new in the field. I don't have the right story, blah, blah, blah. I don't have the right script. Of course, the only option is to say, forget it. I give up. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll get to it sometime. But if your story is, I'm paying myself $30 every time I pick up the phone, even if I get a no, because 1 out of 100 is going to say yes. It's a very different way to frame it. Does that make sense? So let me take this off for a minute.
I do have a question. How do you actually make 500 calls in one day, though?
I don't know. Talk to our buddy Ethan.
Okay.
It
You know,
has
he
like
is.
like an auto dialer that'll just
Yep.
call, like call.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how he did it, but you know, he just budgeted hours a day, and that's what he did, and that's how he built the business. And it was so important and successful for him that he pays somebody else to do it now. He does other things. You know, one of the things about prospecting is it's easy to say right now, I'm so busy that I don't have time for prospecting. But what happens in your business 3 months down the line when you haven't done any prospecting for 3 months? It might be in a dip rather than a rise. And you've all experienced this. And, you know, Chirag and I know that when you're a consultant, business doesn't come steadily exactly every single day. And so it's something to think about how you frame it and how you find a way to think about doing the thing that you think you know you need to do. So let me ask you, let's ask 1 or 2 people to come off of mute here and just tell me what comes up for you, or which one of these are the ones that you want to think more about or adopt to help you be more effective with your prospecting. Which one of these resonates for you?
I can say, so
Go ahead, Ali.
the last one is one of them. Even though I didn't say that's why I don't want to make calls. Like, I definitely have struggled with the story that I don't have enough experience, like I don't have enough to offer. So, you know, giving up before I even start. Things I've been trying to hold on to lately are, one, I know more than I think. So I need to like
Mhm.
more credit. And also, someone once told me, like, you will attract clients to you who need you exactly as you are right now. And sometimes I forget that, but when I remember it, I'm like, that's right. Like, that's what I need to hold on to, because there is someone who needs me in all of my inexperience, and that will work for them. And I don't need to assume nobody needs me, you know,
Got
just
it. Thank you, Ali. What a perfectly human response, right? On the one hand, we've got this automatic response that I'm not experienced enough, I don't have the right skills, I don't have the right whatever, right? That's a very disempowering mindset, set of disempowering beliefs. On the other hand, there's a very empowering belief here, which is somebody has what I want to offer. Remember the 4 SWs. Some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. Some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. Absolutely, someone is waiting for what you have to offer. It's just a matter of finding the person. Thank you, Ali. Let's hear from one other person. What comes up for you out of these 5? Which one resonated for you personally?
I'm pretty bad about the multitasking thing.
Got it. Thank you.
I think probably a touch of ADD, got like 6 things going on at once, and I start something, walk away, come back, start it again, and then it's, yeah. So
thank you for bringing it up, Heidi. That was the one that I was mentioning before, that I'm going to predict that even though I've just told you that focusing on one thing at a time and not multitasking will guarantee a 10 to 20% increase in efficiency, many of you still won't do it because you've got a story in your head. I've got all these other things that are so important. I've got this client's going to be a disaster if I don't get back to my client in 5 minutes. You know, this fear of missing out, all these things steer us towards staying connected to that phone every minute of the day. Whereas actually, if you want to help your business, you might actually be better off. You would actually be better off blocking that 30 minutes out, telling everybody you're not available. You know, we all have this story about how my business will fall apart if I'm not connected to it at every minute of the day. However, are you connected to your business at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the morning, or do you turn your phone off at least at night for a few hours so you can get some sleep? Or if I were to say to you, your 7-year-old only child is having brain surgery right now, and it's a life or death situation, do Do you think that you could tune out? Do you think you could at least tell everybody on your team that you're not available for the next hour while your child undergoes this brain surgery? If the answer is yes, then what that's actually happening is you're telling yourself a story about how things will fall apart without you. And therefore you need to stay connected. It's not necessarily a fact, it's a perspective, right? It's a mindset. And so the opportunity for all of us is to think about, what are we telling ourselves is taking ourselves out of the game? Or what is it that we're telling ourselves that's preventing us from being more effective in another part of our business? And absolutely, this multitasking mindset kills your prospecting. And the science backs that up. Okay, it's 10 o'clock. I want to thank everybody for your attention today. I'd like to ask one thing of all of you, please, before you hop off. We're going to do a new thing here. We're going to, from time to time, ask you for your feedback on our sessions, just so we can hear how it's going for you. I'd like to post right now into the chat a link to a 2-question questionnaire that will take you literally no more than 10 seconds to complete. It only has 2 questions. Basically, the questions are, what do you think of today's session? And what other topics would you like to hear about in the future? So I'm going to put that into the chat right now and ask everyone to just take 2 seconds to fill that out. And we appreciate your input. Everybody see it there? So thank you, everybody, for your attention today. Let us know how you do with all this stuff. And thank you for your input on the survey. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
This was a great session.
Rachel, I need to hop off.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just
Are
wanna make
you
sure
the host or am
everybody
I here?
No,
Can I get
I'll
off without
just,
cutting
yeah,
everybody?
you can hop off. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.